A millionaire disguised as a poor man visited his fiancée's humble parents. When dinner was served, he was horrified by what lay on his plate. Samuel discreetly adjusted his wristwatch, his eyes scanning the room where the charity event was in full swing. The gathering attracted influential people, all seemingly united for a good cause. Soft lighting played across his face, giving away his mixed expression of curiosity and careful observation. As he strolled past an art display, his attention was drawn to Karen, who was engaged in a conversation with a friend about the impact of charitable efforts, a subject that resonated with Samuel's own interests. "Do you really think events like these make a difference nowadays? Do you believe they actually help?" Samuel asked, his tone friendly as he approached with a smile. Startled, Karen turned but quickly answered with energy, "I believe they can. But it all depends on who's organizing them and how the money is handled. Don't you think, though, that sometimes it's more about putting on a show than really making a difference?" The honesty in her response caught Samuel's attention. "I've thought the same thing," he admitted. "In my line of work, I come across a lot of these events. I own a chain of restaurants, and we get asked to sponsor them all the time. I just wonder if we're truly making an impact or just playing along," Samuel added, his voice sincere, reflecting his desire to go beyond just writing a check. Karen regarded him with a newfound respect, recognizing that he wasn't your typical businessman. "That's intriguing. You have the ability to make a real difference with what you've built, depending on how you approach it. What do you think we could do to improve?" Her question sparked a thoughtful discussion about responsibility and how businesses could be more intentional in their impact. They discovered they had more in common than just their wealth, which stemmed from large family investments. "I often wonder if we should invite people who aren't just here out of social duty," Samuel said, leading Karen to a quieter spot where they could continue the conversation away from the crowd. "One of the causes I'm most passionate about is fighting against the trafficking of endangered species in our country. Being a vegetarian, I can't stand that some people still contribute to the threat facing these rare animals." As the night went on, their conversation deepened. Samuel became more certain that Karen wasn't just a smart and attractive woman, but someone he could truly build a future with, someone who shared a sense of purpose with him. He thought to himself, "This amazing woman genuinely wants to make a positive impact in her life and in the world. I really respect that about her. I think we should take the time to get to know each other better. It'll be worth it," he said. Over time, Karen and Samuel's relationship grew from a respectful friendship based on common interests into a strong, committed romance. They spent more and more time together, talking about their dreams, facing challenges together, and laughing a lot, as their love for each other naturally deepened. It was as if every moment spent together affirmed that they were meant to be in each other's lives. One evening, Karen sat down at the dinner table with her parents, Billy and Carolyn, both looking sharp as usual. The discussion focused on Karen's future, and as always, her parents had strong opinions on the matter. "Karen, you deserve someone who's on your level, someone who can offer the kind of lifestyle you're used to," Carolyn said, passing the salad dressing. Karen sighed, fully aware that her parents viewed life through the lens of financial success. "I get it, Mum, but I think what matters most is finding someone who understands and shares my values, not just my social standing, or these surface-level things you seem to care about," Karen replied, trying to shift the conversation away from money and status. Billy, unconvinced, gave her a stern look and said, "Values don't pay the bills, Karen. You need to think about your future, about financial stability. That's what counts in the long run," he urged, hoping to make his daughter see things from his perspective. Karen knew that mentioning the fact that Samuel was wealthy could ease her parents' concerns, but she preferred to keep that to herself. She wanted them to accept Samuel for who he was, not for what his wealth might mean for the family. Samuel is an incredible guy. He's kind, and he has a strong outlook on life. He really makes me happy, Karen said, hoping that someday her parents would see past their material concerns. Meanwhile, Samuel was at a jewelry store picking out an engagement ring for Karen. He wanted something that captured the essence of their journey together, something as rare and beautiful as the love he felt for her. After searching for quite some time, he finally found the perfect ring. A simple yet stunning piece with a graceful design that he was sure Karen would adore. With the ring tucked safely in his pocket, he planned a special moment to pop the question. The big day arrived, and Samuel had arranged a romantic, candle-lit dinner at the same restaurant where they'd had their first official date. Everything was meticulously planned, from the fresh flowers to the soft music playing in the background. When the main course was served, Samuel gently took Karen's hand. "Karen, since the day I met you, my life has been better in every way. You've inspired me to be the best version of myself, to dream bigger, and to love more deeply," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. Karen's heart raced, her emotions swirling with a mix of surprise and joy as she hung on to every word. Samuel continued, "I want to spend forever with you, facing every challenge together and sharing in all the joys. Karen, will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes and a smile that could light up the entire room, Karen didn't hesitate. "Yes, Samuel, 1,000 times yes," she exclaimed. It was a magical moment, the kind of scene she had only dreamed of, never imagining it would come true. She knew there would be challenges ahead, especially with her parents. But right then, all that mattered was the love they shared and the future they were about to build together. As the couple celebrated, the entire restaurant toasted to their love and happiness. Later, sitting on the cozy balcony of Karen's apartment, Samuel carefully brought up an important topic. "Karen, I'd really like to ask your father for your hand. It's important to me that I get your parents' blessing," Samuel said, hoping for a positive reaction. Karen hesitated, her gaze drifting off into the distance. "Samuel, I'm not sure this is the right time for you to meet them. They're a bit old-fashioned and have very high expectations," she said, her voice trembling slightly, hiding her unease behind a shaky smile. Samuel sensed her reluctance and felt a sense of doubt creeping in. Why is she so hesitant to introduce me? Is Karen worried I won't live up to their standards? Or is there something more she's not telling me? He thought back on their past conversations, recalling how she rarely mentioned her parents, except to say they had high expectations. Maybe they are just really strict, or perhaps there's something deeper, some fear Karen hasn't shared with him yet. Eager to lighten the mood, Karen quickly shifted the conversation. "Did you catch the latest news on that scandal about smuggling exotic animals? It's terrible to think people are out there selling meat from endangered species. I'm so glad you're always on the right side of the law, doing what you can to help," she said, trying to steer the conversation away from anything too personal. Samuel nodded, though concern lingered in his thoughts. "Yeah, it's awful. I can't wrap my head around how anyone could get involved in something so cruel. We'll make sure our restaurants have nothing to do with that kind of thing," Karen said. But Samuel looked straight at her, his gaze searching her expression for sincerity. "Please don't change the subject. This matters to me. Why are you so hesitant to let me meet your parents?" Karen sighed, realizing she couldn't dodge the conversation forever. "Samuel, my parents are complicated. They have these expectations. They think I should be with someone who can raise our status even higher. They're conservative, and they judge everyone. I'm worried they'll look down on you because of your background, even though you've built yourself up. But I'm wealthy now, Karen. Won't that be enough for them? I've met people like them before. I figured if money is their issue, I could win them over, Samuel said, trying to make sense of it. It's more than that. It's about where you come from, who you're connected to. They're picky, and they have these ridiculous standards. I don't want them to hurt you. I know how nasty they can be, Karen admitted, her voice filled with pain. Samuel nodded, his eyes a mixture of frustration and empathy. He decided to respect Karen's pace, but he knew, sooner or later, he'd have to confront this challenge. His love for her demanded it, and he was ready to show her parents that he wasn't just a successful entrepreneur, but the man who truly loved their daughter. One afternoon, Samuel was going over the setup of the silverware and glassware in one of his restaurants. Dressed in his usual casual style, a simple shirt and jeans, he preferred to stay low-key and approachable. As he moved around the tables, making sure everything was perfect for the dinner service, he noticed a middle-aged couple browsing the menu, whispering to each other with looks of curiosity and anticipation. With a warm smile, Samuel stepped forward and asked if they needed any recommendations. "We were thinking about trying some exotic meats," the man suggested, sizing Samuel up, likely assuming he was a server. "Well, we do offer a variety of exotic options that are perfectly legal and approved for consumption here in the US," Samuel responded, keeping his tone both polite and professional. "For instance, we have venison and wild boar, both of which are quite popular for their distinctive textures and flavors. All our sources are certified to ensure both sustainability and legality." The woman's interest was piqued, and she inquired if they had anything even more unusual, perhaps something that wasn't typically allowed. Sensing where the conversation was heading, Samuel quickly clarified, "We're very mindful of regulations. For example, serving meat from bald eagles or certain migratory birds is strictly forbidden here in the US. We follow the law and don't offer any products that violate wildlife protection policies." Impressed by Samuel's knowledge and the respectful way he handled their questions, the couple gave approving nods. Before leaving the table, Samuel, acting on a mix of curiosity and intuition, asked casually, "May I get your names? I like to address my guests personally." "We're Billy and Carolyn. We've lived in this city for many years, but this is our first time at this place," the man replied, his tone carrying a subtle pride, though it lacked warmth. Something about the names stirred a feeling in Samuel. "You wouldn't happen to be Karen's parents, would you? She mentioned your names before, and it'd be quite a coincidence if you weren't them." Surprised but cautious, Carolyn confirmed, "Yes, we are her parents." "How do you know her? And why are people mentioning us? I hope she's being treated well," she added, her voice edged with concern. Taking a deep breath, Samuel decided it was time for introductions. "I'm sorry for any confusion earlier. I didn't mean to cause a misunderstanding. My name is Samuel. I'm in the food industry, and more importantly, I'm Karen's fiancé. I'd love for us to have dinner together sometime so we can officially get to know each other." Billy and Carolyn exchanged a quick, surprised glance, but accepted the invitation. "We'd be happy to have you over sometime soon, Mr. Samuel," Billy said, though his voice hinted at hesitation. As Samuel walked away, Billy and Carolyn exchanged quiet words that were far from enthusiastic. "How did Karen end up with a guy we thought was the waiter?" Billy muttered under his breath. "He seems all right, but he's definitely not what we had in mind for her," he added, disappointment clear in his tone. Later that evening, Karen was in the kitchen with her mom Carolyn, helping out with the family's favorite dinner dish. Billy walked in, looking more serious than usual. "Karen, we need to have a talk," he said, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her. Carolyn paused, wiping her hands on her apron as she watched, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong, Dad? You never act like this unless it's something serious," Karen asked, a sense of dread forming in her stomach. She could tell from his tone that this was not going to be an easy conversation. Billy sighed, choosing his words carefully, though his frustration was obvious. "We ran into Samuel today at a restaurant in town. He came over, introduced himself as one of the staff, and to our surprise, as your fiancé. Karen, why are we hearing about this engagement like this? Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Karen felt the weight of her father's words. She'd put off telling them about the engagement, dreading this exact reaction. "I wanted to tell you, but I was waiting for the right time. I wanted you to get to know Samuel first, to see how amazing he is. I didn't want you to judge him too quickly," she explained, her voice shaking with emotion. Carolyn stepped in gently, trying to calm things down. "We get that you want to protect your relationship, honey, but we're your family. We should have been the first to know. Being caught off guard like this makes it hard for us." Karen lowered her head, torn between her love for Samuel and her respect for her parents. "I know, and I'm really sorry," she said softly. "It won't happen again. He just wanted to do things the right way, making sure his proposal was respectful." Even though Billy wasn't fully satisfied, he decided it was best to move on and redirected the conversation. "Well, since he's having us over for dinner, I'll be the one handling the menu. I want to make sure everything's spot on," he said, before motioning for the women to leave the kitchen. Once Carolyn and Karen had left, Billy made his way down to the basement, where he kept a special freezer stocked with select meats. He rummaged through it until he found what he was after. Packages of exotic meats he'd gotten through some shady contacts. "This'll impress our so-called food expert," he muttered under his breath, a sly grin creeping across his face. "Let's see if he can figure out what these are. It'll be a real eye-opener for him," Billy thought, feeling smug as he planned a dinner that would not only test Samuel's knowledge, but also remind everyone who's in charge around here. With the meat in hand, Billy returned upstairs, eager to prepare a meal he believed no one would forget, unaware of the potential drama his choices might spark. As the sun started to set, Samuel arrived at Karen's home, dressed in a casual yet stylish outfit, just a light linen shirt and cotton pants. It was a stark contrast to the upscale setting he was about to enter. When Karen opened the door and saw him, her confusion was clear. "Samuel, why are you dressed like that for dinner with my parents? They have really high expectations and take formalities seriously, and I didn't even know about this dinner until now," she said, clearly concerned as she glanced at his laid-back look. Samuel smiled softly and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Karen, trust me. I want them to see the real me, not some version of myself dressed to impress. I'll win them over with honesty and respect, not by how I'm dressed," he said, hoping to ease her worry. Reluctantly, she agreed and led him inside. The tension was palpable as dinner was about to start. The dining room was set up with expensive china and shining silverware, showcasing her parents' love for status and wealth. Billy and Carolyn greeted Samuel with a stiff handshake and forced smiles, clearly judging his more casual appearance. Throughout dinner, the conversation stayed on shallow topics. Billy and Carolyn talked about the latest social events and their lavish vacations. Samuel remained courteous, speaking when needed, but his focus stayed on Karen, who was visibly uncomfortable with the clash between her family and the man she cared for. Then, the main course was served. Samuel sat quietly as the waiter set down the main course in front of him. But something about the plate immediately caught his attention, making his eyes widen in shock. He noticed that the dish appeared to feature some exotic meats, ones he instantly recognized as possibly illegal. His mind raced with a storm of thoughts and concerns. "This looks like meat from endangered species I've been studying in my class. How did they get this? Could they be tied up in something shady?" Horrified at the possibility that his future in-laws might be involved in illegal activities, he tried to keep his cool, Samuel discreetly moved the meat aside, focusing on the side dishes instead. As the meal dragged on, every bite weighed heavier, and the tension grew inside him. Finally, noticing Samuel hadn't touched the meat, Billy broke the silence. "Samuel, I see you didn't eat the meat. Is everything all right? With your culinary expertise, I thought you'd appreciate the unusual selection. I even expected you to guess what kind of meat this is," Billy commented, with a mix of curiosity and challenge in his voice. "Oh, about that," Samuel began, carefully considering his words. "I really do appreciate the effort, and it's true I know a lot about different meats, but I've recently started following a vegetarian diet for health and ethical reasons," he explained, hoping to keep the mood light. Callie looked surprised and clearly found this news intriguing. "Interesting. So, how do you stay knowledgeable about meats while being a vegetarian?" she asked, her tone a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Her question hung in the air, loaded with implications, and Samuel took a moment to think about how best to answer, knowing that every word could shift the energy of the evening. "The deeper I study the subject, the more I realize that being vegetarian makes sense for me personally. It's a very individual choice," he responded. As dinner wrapped up, the mood remained thick, with unspoken tension and formality. Keeping his composure, Samuel said his goodbyes to Billy and Callie, offering a polite handshake and a smile that barely hid his discomfort. As Karen walked him to the door, she noticed his serious expression. "Samuel, are you okay? You seemed kind of distant after the main course," she asked gently. "I never thought the person who set up this dinner without giving me a heads up would stay so quiet around my parents." "Karen, I know it sounds crazy, but the meat they served tonight, I think it's illegal. It wasn't just exotic. I'm pretty sure it's banned in this country." Karen stared at him in disbelief, her eyebrows lifting in surprise. "Samuel, there's no way. My parents have spent years fighting against smuggling. They're major contributors to wildlife protection organizations," she said, her tone firm, as if trying to dismiss any doubts he had. "I get it, but something's off. I know enough about meats to recognize when something's not normal," Samuel replied, his voice filled with resolve. "I'm going to find out for sure, and if I'm wrong, I'll apologize and never mention it again." Karen, still skeptical, nodded hesitantly. "All right, Samuel, go ahead. Just don't get yourself into trouble or make this bigger than it needs to be," she said, closing the door behind him. As she watched him leave, concern and disbelief filled her expression. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Billy and Carolyn were cleaning up and chatting about the evening. "I'd say tonight was a hit, even with Samuel's strange reaction to the food." As she gathered the dishes, Carolyn remarked, "What was on his plate definitely caught him off guard." Billy chuckled softly, a bit smug. "Yeah, if only he knew what he was really eating." That was pangolin, by the way, a real delicacy, and yes, endangered. But our suppliers are top-notch. They can get their hands on anything, Billy said. Carolyn glanced around to ensure they were alone before responding. "And the shipment of pangolins from last week. How's that situation going? I know a lot don't make it during transport, especially since law enforcement is so tight." "They're secure at our private facility," Billy reassured her. "Our contacts in Asia are still delivering, and demand is just skyrocketing here. This smuggling operation is more profitable than any donation we've made to keep environmental groups quiet," he added, checking his phone for updates from his partners. Carolyn smirked, pleased. "No one suspects wildlife advocates like us are running a smuggling ring this successful," she said. Their conversation made it clear that Billy and Carolyn, despite their public personas, as wildlife defenders, were heavily involved in the illegal animal trade, using their influence to cover up their true activities. While they tidied up the kitchen, both of them silently acknowledged the success of their shady operation, carefully pushing aside any thoughts of what might happen if their actions were ever discovered. In the days after that dinner, Samuel became increasingly fixated on uncovering the truth about Karen's parents and their suspicious behavior. He spent countless hours in his office, poring over notes and maps, trying to piece together information about smuggling routes and places where illegal animals might be kept. His obsession grew more intense by the day, with every small clue analyzed for concrete proof. One afternoon, Karen, noticing the toll it was taking on him, found him surrounded by papers and aerial photos of a remote area he believed was a key smuggling point. "Samuel, this has gone too far," she started, her concern evident in every word. "You're letting this take over your life. Think about what you're doing. My parents aren't criminals, and you're risking yourself for something that isn't even real." Samuel looked up, exhaustion in his eyes, but his resolve was still unshaken. "Karen, I found a place that could be the key to everything. It's a secluded area near Lost Creek Road, and there's been suspicious activity there. I need to check it out myself." "No, Samuel, you don't," Karen interrupted, her voice rising with frustration and fear. It's too dangerous. And what if something happens to you? I can't lose you over something that's not even proven. I need you to stay here, where you're safe. Please, promise me you won't go." Seeing the genuine worry in Karen's eyes, Samuel felt the weight of her words. "All right, I promise. I won't do anything that will cause you worry or put us at risk," he assured her, though a part of him still burned with the desire to push forward. Meanwhile, deep in a hidden shed within a thick forest, Billy and Carolyn were inspecting a secret facility where exotic animals were being kept before being sold on the black market. The setup was extensive and well camouflaged under the trees, with numerous cages containing everything from rare birds to exotic mammals. "We've got to make sure everything stays under wraps, especially with Samuel snooping around," Billy said, casting a critical eye over the operation. "He's more clever than we gave him credit for." Carolyn, standing beside him, watched a group of caged pangolins with quiet unease. It's unfortunate that Karen ended up with someone as nosy and irritating as that guy. For her sake, and ours, we need to keep her in the dark about this. Who knows how she would react if she found out? "She can't know," Billy nodded in agreement. "It's been a relief that she's clueless about our business, and when it comes to Samuel, we've got to redirect his focus. Maybe it's time to call in a favor and get rid of his suspicions once and for all." As they strolled across the property, they talked not only about their day-to-day tasks, but also about how to handle the problem Samuel had become. Each step past the silent animals reminded them of the stakes and just how far they'd go to protect everything they'd worked for. Samuel decided to investigate the suspicious location on his own, despite Karen's pleas, because he had a strong sense of justice and a desire to learn the truth. Before heading out, he carefully prepared his gear, packing a high-definition camera, a voice recorder, and his phone with extra batteries. Dressed in dark, rugged clothes that wouldn't attract attention, he was ready for whatever rough terrain he might face. With a mix of nerves and determination, Samuel set off to the address he had uncovered. Once there, he parked at a safe distance and walked in quietly, using the thick bushes for cover. The place was quiet, but it was obvious there was activity under the setting sun. From a distance, he saw Billy and Carolyn overseeing the loading of some large crates into a truck. Without wasting any time, Samuel started recording, making sure to catch every detail, every shady move. "Billy, Carolyn, how do you live with yourselves lying to everyone? You're smugglers and cheats," he shouted, still hidden, but loud enough to be heard. "This ends now. Karen will find out what you really are, and she'll be devastated." Billy and Carolyn quickly glanced in his direction after hearing the voice startle them. Wasting no time, they motioned to a group of strong men standing by one of the sheds. Within minutes, Samuel was caught and thrown into a large cage that had once held exotic animals. Trying to fight off the panic, Samuel watched as the couple approached. "You really think you can take us down, Samuel? You don't have a clue who you're up against," Billy said with chilling calm. Carolyn, giving him a look that was part pity, part scorn, added, "Don't worry, we'll handle this. Someone like you could bring in a nice ransom. Yes, it turns out you're the owner of the restaurant chain, just in case you want to drop that name into any searches." Samuel, realizing the seriousness of his predicament, began to grasp the full scale of the smuggling operation. Glancing around, he noticed the animals crammed into tiny cages, and a wave of sorrow and empathy for the helpless creatures washed over him. His heart ached at the thought of their pain, and a deep anger started to simmer inside him toward those who made money off such inhumanity. Meanwhile, Karen had returned home to grab the keys to one of her parents' NGO offices, but was frantically searching the house for the missing set. She rifled through drawers, shuffled papers aside, and even checked between books on the shelves, growing more frustrated with every failed attempt. The eerie quiet in the house only heightened her anxiety, making every minute feel like an eternity as she continued her frantic search. Karen pulled open the living room drawers one more time, her heartbeat quickening with the unsettling feeling that something wasn't right. She had already checked every possible spot where the keys could be, but they were nowhere to be found. With a heavy sigh, she decided to call her father, hoping he might know where the keys were, or maybe he had them by accident. She grabbed her phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen until she located her father's contact. As the phone rang, she tried to steady her breathing, mentally preparing herself to remain composed during the call. "Dad," she began, her voice wavering despite her attempts to keep it steady. "I've been searching everywhere for the NGO office keys, and I can't find them. You haven't seen them around, have you? I really need them." On the other end, Billy's voice sounded oddly rushed and out of breath, immediately sparking suspicion in Karen. "Oh, Karen, sweetheart, I'm home now and did a quick check when you mentioned the keys, but I didn't spot them. Maybe you left them somewhere else. You know how these things just seem to vanish sometimes." Karen scowled in confusion at her father's hurried and somewhat evasive response. Just as she was about to question the strange behavior, a muffled shout cut through the quiet background of the call. The voice was unmistakable, cutting through the distance with a mix of desperation and clarity. It was Samuel, no doubt about it. "Dad, who was yelling? What's happening? Is everything okay?" Karen's concern seeped through as she asked, her anxiety growing with each heartbeat. Billy, realizing he hadn't been careful enough before picking up the call, scrambled to respond. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart," he said quickly, trying to sound casual. "That must have been the TV. I'm watching one of those action movies and you know how loud they can get." But before Karen had a chance to think over his answer or ask more questions, the line went dead, leaving her holding the phone, fear gripping her. The thought of something happening to Samuel gnawed at her, along with the growing suspicion that her dad wasn't being honest. Her instincts kicked in. She immediately called the police. "Please, I need help. My fiancé might be in danger. He's on Lost Creek Road and thought something shady was going on there." As soon as she gave the police the details, Karen didn't wait around. Grabbing her keys, she raced out the door, her mind swirling with anxiety and dread. Her car sped down the highway, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, fear of the unknown making her heart pound. Meanwhile, at a remote location, Samuel sat trapped in a cage, staring at Billy and Carolyn. "What are you planning to do with me?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. "Karen will realize I'm missing and come looking for me soon." Carolyn glanced at Billy, her expression hard. "We haven't decided yet," she replied, in a voice as cold as ice. Maybe we'll use you as leverage, maybe ask for some cash, or even make you work for us. So many options, it's tough to choose. As Karen sped toward the location Samuel had told her about, she braked hard, the tires screeching on the gravel. She jumped out, breath heavy, scanning the area for any sign of him. Her heart raced as she approached the old shed. Billy and Carolyn, who had been watching her through security cameras, stepped out trying to keep their faces calm. "Karen, what are you doing here?" Carolyn asked, her voice tight but forcing a smile. "I came to get something I left behind," Karen said quickly. "But what are you doing here? You told me you were home, and I've heard some shady stuff about this place. There's been talk about illegal things going on around here." Suspicion dripped from her words as she fired off questions. Billy tried to stay composed. "We're just here to inspect this shed that's up for auction by the city after an investigation. We're thinking about buying it to expand the NGO's work," he said, dodging the specifics. "And why did you lie about being home when you weren't? What's going on in a place with so many smuggling reports? And why did Samuel shout my name during our call, Dad? Where is he?" Karen's questions came fast, each one piercing through the silence. Her parents exchanged uneasy looks, unable to come up with any solid explanation. Then, a distant voice shattered the quiet. Samuel, calling for Karen again. Without waiting for a reply, she sprinted toward the sound, her parents hesitating behind her. She found Samuel trapped in a cage. Tears filled her eyes, and her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. Samuel stepped out, their eyes locking in shared relief, though the tension was still thick in the air. Billy and Carolyn caught up, clearly irritated by Karen's interference. "You shouldn't have come here, Karen," Billy grumbled. "This is our problem, not yours. You had no business getting involved," Carolyn added, trying to sound authoritative, though her voice wavered. Karen, now standing beside Samuel, let her anger and disappointment rise to the surface, confronting her parents. "How could you? Lying, smuggling, locking Samuel in a cage. This is beyond wrong," she fumed. "You're supposed to be my parents, but what you've done is unforgivable. You should be the ones protecting, not hurting." She glanced outside. "The police are here. If you don't want to be arrested, you'd better find another way out," she said firmly, though the betrayal left her heart shattered. Samuel, still trying to piece together what was happening, asked as their parents hurried to flee. "Why are you helping them escape punishment after what they did? They lied to you. They're criminals." Karen watched her parents disappear into the shadows. "Because, despite everything, they're still my parents," she whispered. "I can't bring myself to hurt them. They're all the family I have left," she said, her voice trembling with emotion, leaving Samuel struggling to fully grasp the weight of her words. He stood silently, watching Karen, reflecting on her last statement. The only family left. What was she referring to? What other losses had she endured? The night left many unanswered questions, and as the faint sound of sirens echoed in the distance, it became clear that the revelations were just beginning to surface. After the intense events at the cabin, the police were able to arrest all the smugglers connected to Billy and Carolyn, though the pair managed to slip away. Once home, Karen and Samuel tried to find some comfort in each other, both still shaken from the ordeal. Sitting together on the couch, Samuel gently held her hands, his eyes filled with worry. "I never saw this coming, Karen. When I realized what was going on, all I could think about was keeping you safe," he said, his voice full of care and concern. Karen, still visibly rattled, struggled to speak. I can't believe it, Samuel. My parents, they were involved in something so awful. How could I not see it? How could I have been so blind?" Her voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. Samuel pulled her into a hug, offering her what comfort he could. "There was no way you could have known. They kept it hidden from everyone. You have to understand, none of this is your fault. They are the only ones responsible for their reckless and horrible actions. You can't carry the blame for what they did." He paused, recalling something Karen had mentioned earlier. "Karen, earlier you said you lost something important. Can you tell me more about that?" Karen took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "A few years ago, my extended family was on a private plane. It crashed, and everyone on board, they all died. My uncles, cousins, they were gone. It destroyed me. The rest of my family lives overseas, and we lost touch years ago. Since then, it's just been my parents and me." Samuel's heart ached as he squeezed her hand. "I'm so sorry, Karen. But you know, once we're married, we'll create our own family. A family built on love, truth, and trust." He paused. "But we can't ignore what your parents have done. They need to face justice for this." Karen wiped her tears and nodded, a new resolve replacing her earlier shock. "You're absolutely right, Samuel. It's time we do something to hold my parents accountable and make them realize the proper way to live. I understand that their rough upbringing has shaped who they are, but that doesn't excuse their cruelty toward animals." That was when Samuel came up with a plan to finally trap Karen's parents. "We can make them believe you broke up with me because I got too involved in their business dealings. Then we set up a meeting where you tell them you need to talk about something important." Karen nodded, recognizing the opportunity to bring her parents to justice once and for all. "Yes, let's do it. I'll call them and ask to meet at the park downtown. They won't suspect a thing, and we'll have the police on standby, ready to apprehend them and anyone who tries to back them up." Over the next few days, the pair planned every detail. Karen made the call, her voice shaky but persuasive enough to lure her parents into the trap. Meanwhile, Samuel worked closely with the authorities, arranging the police presence in carefully chosen locations around the park. The day of the confrontation arrived, and Karen sat alone on a bench. She anxiously awaited her parents' arrival. From a distance, Samuel watched intently, the police officers concealed in the surrounding trees and shrubs. The tension in the air was thick, as they all braced for what was to come. Karen gripped her phone tightly, her hands trembling, ready to give the signal the moment she saw Billy and Carolyn walking toward her. The sky was overcast, casting a somber light over the park as a gentle breeze stirred the autumn leaves along the pathways. Karen sat alone on a secluded bench, her eyes fixated on the winding trail that led to her meeting point. Her heart pounded with anticipation as she awaited the arrival of her parents, Billy and Carolyn. Samuel, along with a small team of undercover officers, stayed hidden at a distance, ready to step in when the moment was right. As Karen spotted her parents approaching from afar, she took a long breath, mentally preparing herself for the confrontation ahead. Billy and Carolyn's faces were etched with concern, but there was also a flicker of relief when they saw her sitting there, seemingly alone. "Sweetheart, why did you ask us to meet here? And where's that fiancé of yours? Samuel, isn't it? And where's that meddling fiancé of yours? You nearly chose him over us yesterday." Carolyn's voice was soft, but edged with curiosity, her eyes searching Karen's face for clues. Karen's expression turned serious, her voice steady as she replied, "I needed to speak with you both in private, away from any distractions." She paused for a moment, watching their reactions closely before continuing. "As for Samuel, I broke up with him. It's fresh. Just happened." She could see the flicker of surprise in their eyes, but pressed forward before they could respond. "He found out things about your business, about the smuggling. At first I didn't know what to think. I was torn. But I've given it a lot of thought and I've made a decision. I want to help you both. We need to deal with this together," she said, her voice calm but laced with an underlying tension, hoping to coax a confession from them. Carolyn and Billy exchanged anxious looks before Billy took a step closer to Karen, his voice dropping to a hushed tone. "Karen, you did the right thing by coming to us. We're going to fix this. But you need to understand that everything we've done, every single decision, has been for the good of this family." Carolyn, regaining some confidence, chimed in. "We can figure this out together, Karen. We might even be able to bring Samuel to our side, if he's willing to see why we had to make these choices. But that's only if he's open to it." Before they could go on, Karen subtly signaled to Samuel, who had been watching the situation unfold from a distance. In an instant, police officers, who had been hidden nearby, emerged and swiftly moved toward Billy and Carolyn. The couple stood frozen in shock. "What is this?" Billy sputtered, his voice rising in disbelief. "We can't believe our own daughter set us up today." "Trust is dead," Billy muttered bitterly, as the officers informed them they were being arrested on charges related to illegal animal trafficking. As they were cuffed, Billy's face darkened with rage, his eyes locking onto Samuel as he approached. "You brainwashed her, didn't you? This has to be your doing. You're rich now," Billy spat, "but you come from nothing. And it shows. You've turned our own daughter against us." Despite the accusations being hurled at him, Samuel remained composed, standing tall amidst the chaos. Karen finally broke down in tears, the weight of the moment crashing over her like a wave. The harsh reality of what had just unfolded was too much to bear. Samuel immediately pulled her into a tight embrace, his arms wrapping around her as he whispered words of comfort. "You did the right thing, Karen. This is about justice, about standing up for what's right, even when it feels impossible." Still clinging to him, Karen's tear-filled eyes followed the scene as her parents were escorted to the police car. With Samuel's steady arm around her, she turned and walked away from the scene, feeling the heavy burden of her past slowly start to lift. She knew this was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where she could finally be free from the shadows of her family's wrongdoings. In the days that followed, Karen found herself navigating a whirlwind of emotions. Relief and a sense of justice mingled with the sadness and loss she still felt for her parents. Samuel, always by her side, suggested they start planning their wedding as a way to shift focus and bring some light back into their lives. The wedding represented a new beginning, something filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. Together, they threw themselves into the details, choosing every element with care and affection. They decided on a simple yet elegant outdoor ceremony, set in the heart of a local garden Karen had always adored. Conversations about flowers, music, and the guest list provided some much-needed moments of relief, giving them both a break from the difficult memories they had recently faced. The wedding day arrived in no time, and it couldn't have been more perfect, a bright sunny day that seemed like nature itself was offering its blessing. Karen looked breathtaking in her flowing gown, adorned with intricate details, while Samuel, as always, looked sharp in his custom-fitted suit, complementing her beautifully. The ceremony was intimate, filled with the couple's closest friends and family who had stood by them through thick and thin. Their vows were heartfelt and emotional, filled with promises of love, loyalty, and a future together, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. After the ceremony, while their guests were enjoying the reception, Samuel and Karen stole a quiet moment under a large oak tree to reflect. "You know, Karen, with everything that's happened, I feel like it's only brought us closer and made us stronger," Samuel said, gently holding her hand. Karen nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. "That's true. Despite all the pain, I feel like we've found our own form of justice. Now, it's time to look ahead, to focus on the family we've always dreamed of," she replied, a soft smile crossing her face. The peaceful quiet between them spoke volumes about the deep bond they had built over time, one rooted in mutual understanding and an unspoken connection. Karen broke the silence, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness, but also excitement, like she was on the verge of sharing something monumental. "Speaking of family," she began, glancing at Samuel with a sparkle of anticipation in her eyes. "I found out something yesterday that's going to change our lives. Even more." Samuel looked at her, his brow furrowing slightly, as if bracing himself for the unknown. "You know how surprises make me uneasy," he said with a soft chuckle, "especially after everything we've been through recently." Karen took a deep breath before letting the words tumble out. "I'm pregnant, Samuel. We're going to have a baby. Our own child. We don't know yet if it's a boy or girl, but soon we'll have a little family of our own." For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Then, in an instant, Samuel's face lit up with pure joy. He wrapped his arms around her in a tight embrace, his voice full of emotion. "This is incredible, Karen. I couldn't be happier. We're going to be parents." His laughter, rich and genuine, echoed around them, filling the space with the sound of newfound joy. After all the chaos that had unfolded, especially with the events leading to her parents' imprisonment, Karen found herself standing at the edge of a new chapter. Though the scars of her parents' betrayal ran deep, she knew she had the power to forge her own path forward, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a better future for her growing family. With a strong sense of determination, Karen knew it was time to sever the toxic ties of her past and embark on a fresh chapter, one centered on healing and making a positive impact. She threw herself into community work as a result of Samuel's unwavering encouragement, especially in fields like environmental preservation and animal rehabilitation that were the antithesis of her parents' wrongdoings. Her involvement wasn't just a casual commitment. Karen became a prominent force in several non-profit organizations, leveraging her resources and personal experiences to bring about real change. Samuel remained by her side through it all, offering not only financial backing, but also his time, dedication, and energy. Together, they took part in awareness campaigns, organized fundraising events, and volunteered at animal shelters. Each action, every step forward, felt to Karen like a way of redeeming her family's tainted legacy, transforming their reputation from one of greed and exploitation into one of compassion and generosity. For Karen, it wasn't about public recognition or praise. Her inspiration came from the profound inner peace she felt while leading a life of meaning, healing her heart and atoning for the harm her parents had caused. Meanwhile, in prison, Billy and Carolyn were left to confront the harsh reality of their actions. Stripped of their once luxurious lifestyle, they initially remained defiant, placing the blame on Samuel for their downfall. However, as time passed and they engaged in long conversations with each other, they began to reflect more honestly on their choices. Gradually, they accepted their guilt and began participating in rehabilitation programs within the prison system. These included ethics courses and workshops on social responsibility, signaling a shift in their mindset. Both held on to the hope that one day they might reconcile with their daughter and rebuild the bridges they had burned. Samuel and Karen were busy finalizing the details for an upcoming major fundraising gala, an event aimed at supporting the new wildlife reserve they were passionately helping to create. This wasn't just any event. It was a powerful symbol of growth, renewal, and their shared dedication to something far bigger than themselves. It marked the culmination of months of hard work, fueled by a deep commitment to protecting the environment and giving back to the community. On the night of the gala, the venue was abuzz with excitement as guests began to arrive, all eager to contribute to the cause. Karen, standing beside Samuel, took a moment to gaze at him, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Without you," she said softly, I wouldn't have been able to overcome everything we've been through. You taught me what it truly means to love. Not just one person, but an entire community. Samuel, gently squeezing her hand, responded with a warm smile. And you showed me the power of redemption and forgiveness. Together we're creating something that will outlast us, a legacy that will benefit generations to come. The event turned out to be an overwhelming success, with donations pouring in well beyond their expectations. As the night deepened and the soft melodies of the live band floated through the air, Samuel and Karen shared a quiet dance, their hearts lighting with satisfaction. It wasn't just the success of the gala that filled them with joy, but the knowledge that their efforts were making a meaningful difference for themselves, the community, and the world. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing heartfelt and inspiring stories like this one. Stay tuned for more exciting narratives that will captivate your imagination. New content is coming your way soon. Thank you for being part of our journey, and we look forward to seeing you next time.